Finding the right sources is imperative to creating quality stories, and identifying those sources for your readers is just as important so that your readers understand why they have significance and they have faith in the facts that are being presented. So let's look a little bit at the attribution that we utilize in journalism and how you can apply it in your magazine articles. So if you think about some of the academic papers that you may have written in the past, you had citations in them. And this is basically the same thing, except we don't add citations in the form of endnotes or footnotes. We put them in the body of the story in terms of who says what to us. So when we get information from a particular source, we need to identify them and we need to say what makes them relevant to the story. And really, without it, the story doesn't mean anything to the reader. They have to understand where the level of expertise comes in so that they have faith in what's being reported. So, I say this to my students, and I feel a little bad every time I do say it, but as a writer, a reporter, your opinion really doesn't mean much. It's not your opinion that we're looking to write about unless you're writing an opinion piece or some first-person piece. But when we're reporting objectively and we're looking to present other people's stories to our readers, we need to get their opinions. So we're looking for the opinions of our sources and understanding why their opinion means something to our readers. The truth is a very slippery thing, as you may have noticed. I mean, I'm sure that we've all seen that situation where you see something for a second and then you're asked to recall it, and very few of us can do that accurately. So what we do is, if we don't see something ourselves, then we cite it with attribution. We say who saw it, we say what they said exactly, and that gives us a level of protection and a level of understanding that this is one person's recollection of the situation. And there may be more, and it may be open to interpretation, but we have a qualified person who's presenting it in this way. The example I have here is, even if you saw a man jump up a fourth-floor ledge, did he jump? Did he get pushed? Did he fall? We don't know. What we need is expert sources to give us that information. So our information is going to tell us where the information comes from, who says it, why they're being quoted, why they have expertise on this topic, and how did you get this information. So this person said it. If they said it, then you interviewed them in person. You either interviewed them on the phone or you interviewed them as a live interview. If you use in a document, you can use the term stated, but they give us the citation as to where that document was located. If you get an email from someone, you say that they stated in an email. So it's important that we provide the context for where the information comes as well. All right, let's take a look at what attribution looks like. So right now we're going to look at it in two different formats. One of it is in a quote and one is in a paraphrase. So this first one over here, this idea of it being in a quote, look at this quote here, and the way that we know it's a quote is we have these quote marks right here. So having these quote marks indicates that this information is verbatim. I received this from a source, and these are the exact words that the source used. And then this attribution is right here. It's going to show me who said it. So in this case, it was Jamie Goldstein, and I have the proper spelling of her name, and then I have to give some information to show why she's significant to the reader. She's the Vice President of Marketing and Communication and Events for the Greater Columbus Arts Council, which oversees the festival. So I need that information so that you know her significance. Now over here in this one where we're looking at it in a paraphrase, if this was the first time I was mentioning my source, I'd give it all the same information that I have over here with Jamie Goldstein. But in this case, I'm showing you the second reference, and on second reference, I only need to use last name, but I still need to attribute, even though I've paraphrased. There are no quote marks here, so this is not exactly what Scott Huntley said. It's kind of a consolidation. I've tightened it up a little bit. These are facts, and remember, facts are paraphrased and the quote supports the facts. So in this case, he's talking about the configuration of the festival, and it provides the best possible festival flow, says Huntley. So I don't know that it's the best flow. It doesn't matter whether it's my opinion that it's the best flow. It's Scott Huntley's opinion that it's the best flow. That's what makes it significant. So, this idea of paraphrasing with attribution, remember, paraphrasing gives you a general idea of what people say verbatim. So we are not guaranteeing this is exactly the words that were used in the order that they were used, but we are accurate in terms of the theme of what's being conveyed here. So I do this almost exclusively when I'm writing facts. so that I don't use up quoted material. I don't have to give a big, long, lengthy explanation of facts that I can consolidate. So in this case, this part of this interview, Scott Huntley was talking to me about his work with Disney, and so I paraphrased this part, but I still provide the attribution. And Huntley's past experience won't hurt him either. He credits his Disney training with helping him focus on experience of each guest, etc., etc. And now I use a quote to support the facts. So after he said that quote, I'm going to use the information exactly as the way he said it. These quote marks indicate that. I can't change this. And I'm really supporting his fact with a real example. I'm sure that there'll be a few hairs pulled out as we implement our yet untested plans for move in and move out, the two most critically planned aspects of the festival, etc. So you'll see this supports the information that he gave us before as a fact. And again, this idea of paraphrasing facts and supporting with quotes, I just wanted to show you another example of that. So here's an article that's from Columbus Crave magazine. It's a food magazine in Columbus. We're talking about this Clintonville dining revolution. Clintonville's a community right within Columbus, and it talks about how it's become a dining destination. And we have someone saying that why they think this is happening. And then we have this line down here, this fact, but Weiland's Jennifer Williams suggests they have more to do with demographics, these changes that are taking place. And then over here we get the quote to support the fact. So we get these quote marks to indicate, this is verbatim, the population continues to diversify, she says, and people moving here are interested in more diverse food options. So these facts that were introduced here are then supported over here on the right-hand side. When we cite attribution, as I mentioned just a minute ago, we use the full name on first reference and we give whatever title is relevant to the reader. What information do we need to know? Now that can be this person is a housewife or homemaker, this person is a professor at the Ohio State University, this person is a longtime motocross rider. Whatever is relevant to your reader in terms of the quote, that's what we put in. We always use this first name, title, and then we give them this information to show their expertise. Now, on the second reference, we don't need to keep using their first name. We can just use their last name. So you'll see, Smith said. And then if there's other additional details that we need to add, maybe if the age is important or anything that might come into play here that we want to add, we can put that on second reference. Of course, there may be some confusion if you have two people of the same name. In that case, it really depends on the publication. Some publications will let you just use first names. Other publications will let you use first name, last name. There are some publications that go with what's called New York Times style, which would be using Mr. or Miss or Mrs., whatever it would be, in front of the last name. They're very rare, though, and that's, again, a decision that the editor makes. We attribute once per paragraph. For the most part, we write in past tense, so we're using said or asked. Again, I mentioned this before, we try to avoid mind reading, so we don't say what they think or they feel. We know what they say they think or they say they feel. And then in terms of AP style, there's very specific ways that we use punctuation in order to indicate that we are quoting and how our attribution goes. So please remember that when you start a quote, there has to be an open quote mark right here, and then we use a comma at the end of the first sentence of the quote. And we close the quotes, and then we put the attribution, he said, with a period. Now, the only time that we would not use a period is if they were continuing the sentence. So we'll see that in a second. So, she went on vacation, open quote, close quote with the comma, he said. She went on vacation, he said. Now notice we have this sentence that continues here. So this is the quote. And the way that quotes usually work is we put the attribution after the first sentence of the quote. So we don't want to leave the quote going for quite some time, because if the reader's wondering the whole time who's talking or why they have relevance to them, they're not going to be thinking about what this person's saying. So give us the first sentence of the quote and then put the attribution, and then you continue it with the open quote again. And in this case, when we're done with the quote, this last sentence, we put a period, close quote. Now, the difference here, what will happen is if this paragraph were to continue, she went on vacation, he said, and we have this comma, and let's say it was, and she got back yesterday. The sentence continued, we would put a comma here. Now, the other option that we have to do is, suppose we want the paragraph to continue the quote. We want a new paragraph. So we would actually, the only thing we would do differently here is we would get rid of this set of quote marks. She got back yesterday.